I actually get people, and they're quite right to say so. Well, if you haven't had AFib in like 900 days, what are you getting an ablation for? Because I put out a video celebrating that I probably won't need the ablation. It's almost really hard to come out later and say, maybe I do.
I had the privilege of engaging in a conversation about atrial fibrillation with Danny, who is also known as Big Northern Bear. He is the creator of a YouTube channel where he and his guests share their personal experiences with AFib and their health journeys. In this video, Big Northern Bear opens up about his own AFib story, including his medical history, potential AFib causes and triggers. He shares what his first AFib episode was like, which landed him in the hospital, lifestyle changes he's implemented to get healthy and fight AFib. And in this video, he shares something he hasn't discussed publicly before, which are his thoughts on if he will or will not have an ablation. Big Northern Bear, welcome to the show.
It's good to see man. You. I'm like just so thrilled to be a guest right now. This is a really nice place you have here.
Oh, thank you.
Looking around, yeah, I really like it. Yeah, you're better decorated than mine. I just have these dollar store frames and.
Looks amazing.
Thank you. Wow, man, I'm actually, now that I'm on this side of the table, I'm kind of nervous.
No, I understand. I've been there. Let's just get right into the interview. I think that'll make you feel better.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
So not long ago, you were a competitive power lifter before AFib derailed all that. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I was, let's say, aspiring, because powerlifting is something, just really going back, actually I was in my, let's say, 39, 40, I had a midlife crisis, and I had done then what I did now, where I lost a bunch of weight and got into fitness. And I got really hard into Muay Thai and kickboxing, and I ended up being a coach for these martial artists. And over time, jobs and careers and families started to separate this core group of friends I had, and I found myself with my own career, unable to train at group sessions with other people. So whenever I missed training, I'd end up in the weight room. And gradually over time, all my physical training became about weight training. And I seem to have a talent for it. I was definitely lifting more than other guys my size in the gym, and more than guys 20 years younger than me. And I was deep down I'm a combination of competitive and insecure. So I just kept going at it. It was something where I stood out, right? And I moved to Burlington, and I ended up joining a powerlifting gym because they had all these unusual objects we didn't have in the normal gyms, and they didn't care if you're dropping the heavy weights. And I met a great coach, and little did I know that I was training with this fellow Ron, who last year became the Masters 3 world champion in Sweden. Little did I know at the time, wow. That's who I was training with. Marja. Marja became the Canadian powerlifting champion, competed in internationals, holds a women's squat record in Masters. And so I was just, and Coach Travis, who's on YouTube as the Natural Alpha, I was just surrounded by not just local legends, but national legends. And it really got me fired up. And they talked me into competing. And I went to my first tournament. And at this point, I had stopped all cardio. The days of cardio that when I was doing Muay Thai, I was doing cardio all the time. No, it all gone out the window years ago. I was gaining weight. I was getting really fat. I was telling myself stuff like, well, weight moves weight. You're in the unlimited weight class. It really can only help you. You don't have any health problems.
You're gaining weight,
nothing
but you're gaining
serious.
Strength.
I mean, I was like, I'm bulking, right? I'm bulking. Yeah. Because once you're in the unlimited class, you can weigh 600 pounds. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But really, I see it now as I was in denial, right? Yeah. And I was certainly in denial that at the time I had blood pressure. And I just look at these old videos of me where I'm at the rack, and I'm pulling like 675 pounds and then 750 pounds, sort of to do what we call high rack pulls, and it's just to get your body used to bearing the weight. And I can just imagine what my blood pressure was like while I was holding 750 pounds. I bet you my blood pressure was, I'm lucky I didn't pop something in my heart. I'm really fortunate. And my family doctor actually, a few months before the incident, we'll call it, got an argument with me, really wanting me to take blood pressure medication. And I really told him off, and I actually think I scared him a little bit.
Yeah.
And I really regret that conversation now, and I've since apologized. But he really advocated to get me to control my blood pressure, and time proved him right because, um, you know, I'll get into that in a minute. But I did compete, and I did my first tournament, and I won a gold. And this was going to be the last year at Masters One. So
Mhm.
I looked at all the stats across Canada, and I realized if I could just maintain these numbers that I posted in a legit tournament now, I would actually podium next year in Masters 2 in Canada. So if I just showed up, competed at all the levels, put the same numbers I have now, I would probably be silver or bronze. And I thought that would be amazing. I'm going to work on that. I knew I was going to get stronger because I was still getting stronger. So um, the guy who won gold, though, was international level. I probably wouldn't have caught him, but I was really had this goal in my mind. So everything else, I didn't care about diet. I just cared about the amount of weight I was lifting. And then, I had a big, heavy gym session. I used to bench press for about 2.5, 3 hours when I was on my
Wow.
bench press night. And, when you bench press, when you're bench pressing a lot of weight, like I would bench press my 2 or 3 rep max, wait 5 minutes and do it again because I just wanted a lot of reps at that really high weight. So the only way to do it is big rest in between and train for a long time.
Mhm.
So I was bench pressing about 330 for 2, and I would just hit it again, wait 5 minutes, hit it again. I'd be on that bench about 2 hours. In between, maybe I'd do body weight squats or some curls or something like that. And I came home. My wife was out of town. She was in Niagara Falls with her sisters and the kids, and they were enjoying the hotel in Niagara Falls. And came home. There was a new pizza shop I'd heard about. I grabbed this pizza on the way. Had a couple shots of rye. I was going to put on a movie. I was feeling all pumped from the workout. It was going to be the perfect night. Like, it was just going to be the perfect night. I'm all worked out. Reward myself with a bit of food. Have 2 shots of rye. I never drink, but that night I had 2 shots of rye. And started a movie. And about 10 minutes into the movie, I just suddenly felt like I'm so tired that I should just go to bed and sleep. And I thought exhaustion had just creeped up on me or something. So I'm
Mhm.
like, what the hell? I'm just going to go to sleep. So I went and laid down, and I woke up about an hour later because there was this pounding in my ears. So I'm like, wow, this feels really bad. So I felt my pulse, and it was just jumping all over the place. And I felt like
Okay.
it's like 200. It was so fast. And so I got up out of bed, and my blood pressure cuff, because I did have one and I ignored it
Mm.
as much as I could, but it was down in the basement. So I went down in the basement, got my blood pressure cuff. I sat in my chair, I checked my blood pressure. My blood pressure was like 240 over 190, and the pulse was like 185. And I was like, oh shit, that's not good. So I didn't know if I should call an ambulance or what. But when I got up and started walking up the stairs, I got to about the second stair, and I couldn't go up any more stairs. I was out of breath. The room was going black and spinning, and I thought, this is it. I'm having a heart attack. I'm just having a freaking heart attack.
Wow,
So
scary.
yeah, so fortunately I had my phone in my pocket because there's no phone in the
Mhm.
basement. So I sat on the steps and I called 911, and I'm talking to the lady. She says, well, is your front door unlocked? And I'm like, no, it's locked. She says, is it a code? I said, no, I have the bolt on. I'll find a way to get to the door. You just get an ambulance here. So
Yeah.
so she let me go. Fortunately, the ambulance literally is 2 minutes away from me. So she let me go, and I go to the front door, unlock the front door, and I'm just sitting there. I'm not even wearing a shirt because I was in bed. And the fire department shows up, and like 6 guys come in. And I guess it's protocol when they think someone's might not be able to walk under their own power, or is possibly trapped in the house. They'll send the fire department too.
Okay.
So the fire department came, and I'm trying to text my wife saying I'm going to the hospital, but I couldn't get one off because they kept needing me to do stuff. Like they kept needing me, lift your shirt, tape this, lift your ankles. We're taping stuff to that. And they're
Yeah,
doing
you're
the
being
EKG.
treated.
Yeah, they're asking me a ton of questions. And then the ambulance showed up and they had to take these guys 6-lead EKG away and put on the 12-lead from the ambulance and then get me in the stretcher. And little did I know, my wife is watching this on her Ring doorbell, freaking out. And I can suddenly feel my phone blowing up with text, right? And I can see, and I want to answer her, but I'm dealing with this now. And so they carry me to the ambulance, and I'm in the ambulance, and I remember the ambulance attendants on the phone with the doctor. And she said, he's an Afib. And I remember thinking, because my first career long ago, I was a registered practical nurse, right? And I remember thinking, oh, thank God it's Afib. It might not be a heart attack, because up until that moment, I swore I thought I was having a heart attack. So it's like Afib. My first thought was thank God, and then my second thought was, wait, it's still really bad. And then I heard her say on the phone, "Do we have permission, to go full code if we need to?" And I'm like, I know what full code means. I used to be a nurse. And she just looks at me and shrugs, right? And so she got consent from the doctor, and they had me all wired up. And then we started driving to the ambulance, and she's asking questions, all the health background questions, and just keeping me talking, I think, and trying to keep me calm. And I have this stress reaction around medical staff. I think a lot of people, they react to that type of anxiety, what I'll call medical anxiety, when you're suddenly in an emergency situation and you're the patient. Some people, they get mad. Some people get really quiet, and they tend to do it every single time they're in that situation. And me, I tend to just tell a lot of really stupid jokes. And so she's asking me these questions. What do you have? I'm like, asthma. I've got untreated high blood pressure. And at that point, I'm like, it's come to Jesus. I'm confessing everything, right? And I'm pre-diabetic, and I just owned it all. And she goes, is there anything else? I said, yeah, I tend to think I'm a lot better looking than I really am. And everyone just sort of laughed. And I remember it seemed to take all the tension out of the ambulance. The fire department guy was there, and the ambulance, or the paramedic, she was a paramedic, and the driver, they're all laughing. Everyone chilled out. We get to the hospital, and they just bring me right in. And it's during just the beginning of the rumors of the pandemic starting. Just something's going on in Italy, and the videos were on of people in Italy on their balconies singing. And but my wife, she couldn't come in because she's in Niagara Falls, an hour away. And so finally could answer her text and tell her I'm an Afib. I think they're going to shock my heart. I'm really scared. Because that's one thing I actually never got to see as an RPN. I never actually saw someone cardioverted. Funny enough, I've seen people get electroconvulsive therapy, and now that I've been cardioverted, I think that's a lot scarier. Cardioversion is nothing, but at the time I thought, you just have what you see on TV when people are, charge and everyone's swarming, but they were also calm, and they were also, this is just so routine. Relax. Like this is so routine to them. And I was just scared out of my wits. Right. And then the doctor comes out, and he said, he's got 2 big syringes, and he says, well, we're, for the IV. And he says, we're going to knock you out. And then we're going to, shock your heart. And they had this big thing taped to me. And I said, well, why do you need 2 syringes? And he says, well, the other one's, for pain, because when you wake up, your chest will be sore. And I said, like, is it an opiate? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I was put on opiates in my 20s, and I got addicted, so I never want to be on that. So just I'll deal with the pain. You can knock me out though. So and then he said, great, so we can go. And I'm like, yeah, but, and I really screwed up. I said, yeah, but. So I gave consent. And the room just exploded. And my but I would just like to call my wife first, because I'm really scared. You knock me out and I won't come back. And I just want to call her one time.
It's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so he's like, no, you can call her. You can all call her after. And that's when I learned that, in an emergency situation, emergency situation, if you have questions, you need to ask them before you give consent, because once you give consent, they're just going to act. Like, they're just going to act, and they won't have time to answer your questions. So you need to sort of hold them hostage, withhold your consent, get all your questions answered. And I had failed to do that, but what the hell, they were going to try to shock me. So they put me under, and I guess I don't know how much longer it was, because that stuff's really hypnotic, right? And but I remember being punched in the chest,
Oh,
and I
you
look
remember
like
that? Wow. You
like a
felt it.
punch, like a really
Hmm.
hard punch. And
Yeah.
I did Muay Thai with like really good Muay Thai kickboxers, so it was a kick harder than any of them had ever given me. So I woke up like, what the hell? And I look at the doctor. Did you just punch me? I think I was ready to like kill him, right? Because I was sort of out of my head though on the white medication that they give you to knock you out. I can never remember the name, but he said, no, 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 you just felt the last shock. He said the first two didn't work, so we thought the pad wasn't on you right, because you're kind of a big guy. So we fiddled around and moved it, and the drug must have worn off. So you felt the last one. I said, okay, well, did it work? And he said, no, it didn't work. I'm like, well, now what? What do we do now? He said, well, we're going to give you a bag of fluid, and there'll be medication, and we'll see if that works. I said, well, how long does that take? He said, could be an hour, could be never. I'm like, okay, well, let's get it started. And then at some point, my wife arrived, and she was able to join me. And she took that picture I use a lot. Maybe I shared it with you, but where I'm in there, and I'm sitting in a chair, and I've got blood pressure next to me, and the IV pumping fluids into me, and so that's the night she took that picture. And I went to the hospital for AFib a few times over the next 3 months, and looking back now, because it was always chaotic, and always quite often they give me that drug. So sometimes I mix up in my mind what happened on which trips, right? And I know there was one trips they didn't shock me and they gave me the medication, but it was a dark time, and the lockdown started shortly after. And so suddenly I had AFib, and when I left the hospital that night, I converted back on this drug called procanamide, and they'd given me 200 milligrams of metoprolol, so 100 milligrams twice a day, which is, I found out immediately, it's a pretty big dose because it knocked me on my ass. And they gave me blood thinners, and they put me on blood pressure medication. They gave me one blood pressure medication, which I think was candesartan.
Okay. So that was in addition to the metoprolol.
Metoprolol and that, because I did have uncontrolled high blood pressure, right? And I did sort of confess to that in the ambulance. So, and they sent me home and said, you have new life rules because these blood thinners, if you ever bang your head, you got to come in. We got to CAT scan you, and that, which happened one time. And so I'm at home, and then the lockdown started shortly after that. And Canada locked down pretty hard, if you remember. We were one of the eager beavers. And that was really hard on me because I was in March, so my gyms were closed. I was sort of afraid to go to them and work out now anyway. I had a lot of anxiety about working out.
Right.
And my gym's closed for a while, and I was just really depressed. And I have seasonal affective disorder, and that's like the worst time of year for that. And now I had these beta blockers, big dose, making me feel terrible. And the ectopic beats started after that. I never had ectopic beats until they cardioverted me. And then I had these really bad where my heart I would feel like there's a fish in my chest flapping around for 5 or 10 seconds. And it was so scary because it would feel like I'm going back into AFib, and then would just either go away or I would be an AFib. So it was, I always say, I feel like that time I felt like I had a jack in the box or a heart. You never knew when it's going to go off, but you knew it's going to go off, right? And so I was really depressed, and I had just switched jobs. I had got hired before I got AFib and I had given my current job 3 months notice because I had a really key position. I didn't want to leave them high and dry. And during that time, I came over to my new job, and that was mid lockdown. So I actually never spent a single day working with my new coworkers in the office. And I've been working remotely ever since. And but during those first few months, I was just depressed. My weight at its peak, I probably hit 350 pounds because now I also wasn't training. And part of the way we got through the lockdowns was there was this big campaign to order out and keep the restaurants alive. And I felt fortunate because I was able to work during the pandemic, had a remote job. So we were ordering out and trying all these new restaurants, which only helped me balloon up. But I was also using as sort of an anesthetic for anxiety about the AFib, right? Like I would always turn to food for comfort, especially high fat, high carbohydrate, crappy food, like the worst imaginable food. I would turn to for comfort. And so during that time, I did that, and I would end up back in AFib and back in the hospital. But the one thing I did was I started keeping notes because I heard about triggers. So I realized that my AFib almost always came on after a big meal. There was like a couple of things that happened. Came on after a big meal and always in the evening between, let's say, 6 and 8 at night, 8:30. And usually when I felt really tired and hadn't slept good. So that was sort of a pattern that was emerging. And then the Canadian long weekend, the May 2-4, was the height of wave 2, I guess, or wave 2 was just building. I don't quite have the timeline right, but I ended up in ICU overnight. I ended up in Emerge the Thursday night of the Friday long weekend beginning with the Friday. And my potassium had bottomed out. My magnesium had bottomed out. The cardioversion wasn't working. The drugs weren't working. So they admitted me to ICU because they essentially didn't know what to do, and they hung a bag of magnesium and potassium. And about 4 hours later, my magnesium and potassium levels were up, and then the procanamide stuff worked at that point, and I converted back about 5 a.m. But it was such a rough night. Like, you got to understand, when I'm in AFib, it's really bad. I could barely walk. It feels like a heart attack. I'm not one of these guys who can walk around in AFib and just be fine. Like the fellow I just interviewed, Dave, the ultra runner. He can walk around for a month. He can outwalk me with AFib. He can outwalk me. I'm not like that. And so I'm in the hospital, and after that, the nurse had to help me to get to the bathroom. Imagine, Steve, a few months ago, you were on track to podium as a national powerlifter. You were on course. You had the numbers. Now you need to help to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Life-changing overnight.
And the lockdown and the other thing that came with my AFib. Like, I always had a bit of anxiety and would react sometimes. But with the AFib, man, I don't know what it is about AFib, but the normal background anxiety I always felt just through the roof. And it was such a hard time. And, God bless my wife for being like just the calm, lovely person she is, man, because I really needed that at that time. And we were locked in together. I mean, could you imagine the recipe, the pressure cooker recipe if she had been sort of a less of a person than she is. And I read that. So I got in the ICU. They moved me to the cardiac ward now that I was in sinus rhythm, but they weren't letting me go home. My family couldn't visit me, so I got put into an isolation room because COVID protocols, and I had to be COVID tested for like 3 days negative, and it was so strict at the time.
Yeah.
So I would go to the window on the 5th floor, and I would look down on my wife, and she would be in the parking lot, and she would phone me, and we'd talk on the phone. So she'd come by every day and do that, and she'd come by and bring she could drop off a bag for me of like apples and my protein bars and stuff like that. And but no one was allowed in. It was like the heart of the lockdown. Here I'm in this cardiac care unit. And it was 3 days before they even let me leave my room just to go for walks, like around the ward. But I wasn't allowed to go down the elevator because I was wearing this halter, and it would lose communication with the server if I left the floor. So, yeah, but I felt okay. And while I was there, they're like, okay, well, we're going to take advantage of the lockdown a bit because we're going to send you to Hamilton Health Sciences, which is supposedly, and I don't have any reason to believe that it's not true, the best cardiac care facility in the country for, like, they do the ablations there. The two best EPs in Canada, two of the best, are there and available to see you because of the lockdown. They have time on their hands. So, and we're also going to do an angiogram where they put you under a CAT scan or whatever, and they thread the thing up into your heart and drop dye to look for blockages. So there I am. I'm there Tuesday morning after 4 or 5 days in cardiac care, and they're prepping me and they're shaving where they're going to inject this thing into my leg to thread up into my heart. And then the cardiologist surgeon comes out and he says, I'm not operating on you today. I'm looking at your ECGs from when you're in Afib. And he said, this is not a blockage. And I said, oh, because my cardiologist in Hamilton believes so strongly I need this test that she kept me here 4 days in hospital and wouldn't let me go home until I had it. And he said, I'll tell you what, you have the two best EPs in Canada coming down to see you in half an hour. If they say you need the surgery, I'll do the surgery. I'm like, okay, that's pretty fair. I'm like getting all these consults like crazy. So this was a good thing about the lockdown in my mind. So the two EPs came down and they assessed me. And basically it was like, okay, here's a pill in the pocket. Go home, lose 50 pounds. You'll probably never have Afib again. And after that, I actually went over a year without Afib, but it wasn't because of the pill. It was because the cardiologist back in Burlington Hospital, when I got back, she said, Danny, honestly, the best thing you can do is go home and just start walking an hour a day. Start doing that. And so I went home and I couldn't walk an hour. I could walk maybe 10 minutes at first because I was still really weak from it all. So I just did that 6 times a day to build an hour a day. And I just started doing that. And that alone, I wasn't dieting, although over the year I probably lost 20, 25 pounds just incidentally. That alone, and plus during that week, they'd up my metoprolol to 300 from 200 and got my blood pressure, a ton of blood pressure meds. So all of that combined, let's say, kept me pretty much Afib free, 1 year. And then we got to Halloween. And Halloween is kind of an auspicious day to go look at your blood tests and find out you're diabetic.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was the last straw. And for me, and I'm gonna tell you something now I haven't told anyone on YouTube. But the reason why this was such a big deal for me, because when I was 39 and 40, remember I said I lost a ton of weight, got into kickboxing, and I was weightlifting. I had a blog about the keto diet, paleo keto diet. And I was one of the strictest people about it. And my blog was doing pretty good. And there's a recipe out there for chocolate blubber that's still floating out there is my recipe. And if you Google chocolate blubber, you'll find Primal North and some of my other recipes floating out. But I killed the blog. And I somehow, like I said, I got off the path. I knew how to walk the path, but I got off the path and I let myself go. And so when that diabetic thing came in, I was like, I don't know what the hell to do for Afib. This I can do something about. I know exactly what to do about this. Exactly. And in between the time I had done the sleep studies and got my sleep apnea fixed on the CPAP, so I actually had the energy and the mental acuity combined with some cognitive behavior therapy I did to get my anxiety mostly under control. So I felt ready for change. And I guess I'm one of these hard learner people. I'm like, it's a survival instinct, but I don't change easily. Usually I have to like hit some sort of bottom, and then I come out like once that switch is hit, I come out hard. And that's what I did. And I came out hard, and I made it. I looked back at myself. I met with my cardiologist the next day, and he said, Danny, every time you come here, you say you're going to lose weight. Now you're diabetic. So your cholesterol was perfect for a non-diabetic, but now that you're diabetic, the guidelines say I got to put you on a statin. And I said, look, another medication, like I was just going to lose my mind, right? Going to lose my mind. I said, give me 3 months. If I still am diabetic on your test, I'll take your statin. He said, okay. So I went home and I sat back and I assessed. I have tried to lose weight every single year for like 8 years. I know how to lose weight. I used to blog about it. People used to thank me for giving them advice on how they can lose weight. And I was like, I know the path. Why did I fail that first time? Why, when I was 39, 40, 41, why did I stop? And I realized that I would just, maybe this whole thing of coming out and just going full hard and full on and take no prisoners was working against me, right? Is it really realistic for me to think I can just change all my life and at one time? So I said, well, what can I do? Maybe I can take what I know as an ISO process analyst, an ISO auditor, and a business process analyst and a data analyst. Maybe I can take an approach based more off that, because I know those principles are effective. So I thought, what would be my key performance indicator here? Well, one's obviously my blood sugar. Another one's obviously my weight. And, what are the process inputs to losing weight? Exercise and diet, right? So those are my inputs. What are the outputs? Well, weight loss and fitness. So I'm like, I'm just going to measure my KPIs like I would for a business process, right? So how do I got to do that? I said, okay, well, you have to weigh yourself every day and you have to track your calories. Then I feel like the real inspiration was when I said, but you're not going to set a calorie goal. What you're just going to do is measure, because in process analysis, we have this expression, you get what you measure. So just because you're always keeping an eye on it, you'll naturally, organically get improvement. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to track my calories. I'm going to weigh myself. I'm going to walk my hour a day, which I've already been doing. And as long as I do all those three things, if I screw up and eat a cheesecake, as long as I just log the calories for that cheesecake, if I screw up in other ways, I'm going to carry no guilt. So long as I log the food honestly, weigh myself every morning, and do my hour walk, those were the only 3 rules. And that did the trick. At that point, I just did that, and then those became habit. And those habits sort of consolidated into a routine. And the idea that you become what you repeatedly do totally works. So I read that book, The Afib Cure, about 2 months before this. So I had the knowledge and I had bought the watch, And so I started like, I'm getting really good at this, tracking my calories, and I'm starting to see a few pounds. Well, what if I did this thing where I doubled the amount of vegetables, like it says in the book, and I only ate to 80% full, and the weight kept coming off. I still didn't have a calorie goal. In fact, some days I was eating like 4,000 calories, but the weight was coming off, and the walks were getting boring. So I'm like, I'm going to start, and they weren't challenging me anymore. So I'm going to on the downhill sections, I'm going to jog, because I do my walks outside. So I started jogging on the downhill sections just to keep my heart rate a little higher. And it just snowballed. Next thing you know, Good Friday, me and the family are out. I'm doing my first 5K race. And my family came with me. The kids came with me. The kids made it look easy. Yeah. My wife, God bless her, ran a 5K without any running training at all, just to do it with us,
to support you. Yeah,
she awesome. Ran a fucking 5K with no training. Now she was sore after, okay, but she did it just to support the family because she knew this was a good direction. So we did the 5K, and I'm, I have them. I keep this medal. That's what that medal means to me. This is way more
Absolutely.
than a 5K medal to me. And then, a year later, less than a year later, I did the 10K in Oakville, and that was like the capstone of that year because it was the anniversary of finding out I was diabetic. So it's not to the day, but to the month. It's the anniversary. So in that year, I had lost a total of 110 pounds. And like I said, I knew what to do. It was being consistent about it, and not having like your emotional mental jujitsu work against you because you just piled too many moving targets into your radar, and you can't track it all and possibly keep up with them, right?
Yep.
So I've learned just to make a few changes at a time and just get those so they're on autopilot before I go add the next improvement. Okay. So yeah, so that was a really long answer to your question, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
it felt good to get all that out. I know
great.
I skipped over a lot of it, but
no, that's great. That's what I love about the AFib cure too, is it inspires you to do lifestyle changes, and you took it to the next level,
Well, I feel really blessed because like I compare myself, Steve, like I know a little bit of your history, and I know you also went out and exercised, but the advantage I had over you is I could actually lose 100 pounds.
Yeah.
You didn't have it to lose, so in some ways my crappy lifestyle prior to AFib worked to my advantage after AFib. Because for me, it was really obvious what's causing my AFib: uncontrolled high blood pressure, sleep apnea, and being overweight. I mean, and having zero cardio ability, right? So it was really obvious. So the interventions became really obvious, and there are other people, like the fellow, like Dave, like I interviewed, an ultra runner. I mean, what are you going to tell him to go exercise harder? And he's already eating clean. So I feel lucky in that regard that I had a type of AFib that's responsive to lifestyle. And I think everyone's AFib is responsive to lifestyle, but not to the same level. Okay. And then obviously there's like genetic components, and some people it's just bad luck, man. You're going to be an AFib no matter what you do. But even if that's the case, even if I grant that's the case, that no matter what you do, your AFib is going to come on. Let's just assume that's the case. Okay. I'm going to compare it to the last time I had AFib. So I went something like 600 days without AFib. I went on vacation, ate like crap for a few days on vacation. My GERD kicked up. I had a really bad night's sleep in Ottawa. Then I drove from Ottawa back to Burlington. And I was really tired, and I ate crappy, and I had GERD, but I had to run out and buy this last pair of running shoes that was available at the store because of pandemic shortages. I really wanted these runners. And then I bought them. I'm like, well, the trail's right over there. So I just going to put them on and do a 5 mile. And I did a 5 mile run. An hour and a half later, I'm in the shower and I go into AFib. So I just really showed a really bad judgment because my AFib always came in the evening. I had a rule about working out in the evenings. I would always work out in the morning. So I broke my own rules and ended up in the hospital. But this time, aside from my heart flipping out, because my cardio was so good, no symptoms, I felt strong as an ox. I wasn't scared. So I would say that if you have the type of AFib that's really resistant to lifestyle modification and even medication, the fact you go out and you build your cardio ability and build some muscle, it's still improving your base health. So even if you're in AFib, you're going to function a lot better. And there's cases of athletes and bicyclists, and they go into AFib and it just derails them for a few minutes and they're back to normal. And wouldn't you rather be like that than like I was, where you spend 5 days in a cardiac care unit because you're so sick you can barely function from AFib? So there's still a case to be made for those people to improve their health, right? And So I don't see a reason not to do it. I see AFib as a wake up call. Even though maybe you were living a pristine life, it's a wake up call of something that you have to pay some attention to your heart. So maybe you're going too hard, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm open to being proven wrong. So
So what exercises are you still doing today? Are you getting back into powerlifting, or are you mostly sticking to cardio, or a combination of the two? Or
well, I got to the point with I was running like every day, and then twice a day I was doing too much running, and it was what was happening was it wasn't bothering my setting off my AFib, but my joints were just hurting because I'm still a heavier guy, right? Like I'm not a skinny guy. My joints were starting to hurt, so I backed off from running every day, and now I try to walk on the non-running days. And I had returned to powerlifting, and I've been actually doing really well with that. And I'm just as I'm starting to get to my old numbers, my last two bench press sessions, I felt my heart twitch after. And I've been working out in the evenings. I'm at this point, AFib's so far behind me, I think. It's so well in remission that I have been lifting weights in the evenings. So, but I felt my heart flipping, like trying to get to AFib and not quite getting there. And then only for about, let's say, 10 seconds, but it scared me. And so I've been kind of reluctant to, because now that I'm getting back to my old weights, I'm getting the old thing again. And I'm really questioning if it's worth it at this point. So I'm a bit stymied as what to do. The other night I went with my stepdaughter and we went to her gym, and I ended up doing heavy squats, and it was in the evening, and I was doing the belly brace, the Valsalva maneuver for the squats, because I was, getting fairly heavy. And I didn't get that fluttery heart after, but what happened was it was almost like, I don't know, just all the energy went out of me like that first time. Just, but there, my pulse was low. My pulse stayed under 60, but that kind of bothered me. So I really don't know. I'm thinking maybe I'll switch to boxing. But again, I worry about if I get punched in the chest or squeezed, like doing jujitsu, like used to do jujitsu, and quite often you get squeezed along the ribs in your stomach and your sternum. So I'm a bit of a loss to what I want to do, honestly. But the running for sure, I'm planning to run a half marathon at this same race. I'm gonna go run a half marathon. At that one, I did their 10K. I'm gonna go back and do their half marathon this year. That's my goal. I'm running a 10K Canada Day, July 1st. So that'll put a 10K, another 10K up there, and a half marathoner on this, and a few more race bibs. But that's probably going to be my only ever powerlifting medal. So I'm glad it's gold.
absolutely.
I'm really glad it's gold. And I love working out. I use my Fitness Pal, not my Fitness Pal. I log it with Map My Run, even my gym workouts, and my watch. I have pretty much every possible award for consistently for exercise since I started with the Apple Watch. So I'm really I do enjoy it. But
Yeah, I like that you hang those medals proudly, though. I mean, it's you were at such a low, and when AFib's kind of in control of your life, those kind of signify the time that you took back control of your life.
right, and they're really
like
actually not that impressive. Like if you're in a sport of powerlifting, to get to win a gold regionally is not that impressive. A 5K and a 10K completion medal, participant medal, they're not impressive, but that's what they represent to me,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like this represents my family coming out and my wife doing a 5K with me without training, and this represents a capstone of a year of transformation. So that's why I have them behind me when I broadcast quite a bit, because of the meaning they have. I mean, it's just it's been a year, man. Like since AFib, my life has just been unusual.
Flip your life upside down. Absolutely. I relate to that.
Yeah.
Overnight, almost. One day you look at your life and your future a certain way, and then when you realize you have AFib and when your heart's not working right, you just think about things differently. You look at your future differently. Absolutely understand that.
Well, and maybe it's also because now I'm entering my 50s, and I would, in my early 40s, I would think I'm never going to relate to the way those 50-year-old dudes think, but now I think just the same way as them. And stuff that would bother me when I was 40 I don't give a shit about now. And
That's good.
I mean, like I can actually listen to politics and not lose my temper now. I can just like turn it off, click. I don't want to listen to that today.
It's much healthier for you that way too.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. And so I mean, I'm really glad for the victories I had along the way. Like, I'm no longer diabetic. I lost, if I go back from when I weighed at my peak, about 350, to where I am today, it's about 115 pounds weight loss. So it's some of my videos, like I actually start counting my weight loss Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So when my videos, when I say 107 pounds weight loss, it's from Halloween to that day. But if I took the previous year where I wasn't really trying, I still lost like 25, 30 pounds just from the walking. I could certainly claim 150 pounds weight loss. So it's like this moving target, because I'm do the videos, you're just on the fly, and but what happened was I lost so much weight that my skin was super loose, and when I was running, it was painful. I would have like painful just under my chest where the sagging bulge was, and then along my waistline where the loose skin around my abdomen
Oh,
would
wow.
jiggle and bounce. And when you're doing 10Ks with loose skin, I mean, it can be quite painful.
Yeah, I
And
bet.
so I was talking to Coach Travis, and Natural Alpha, and he said, Danny, just stay where you are for a while. Like, just give yourself a break. Let things settle. Stay where you are for a year or two. You don't
Yeah.
need to lose any more weight. You're not diabetic. Your blood pressure's under control. You fixed your sleep apnea. It's all for vanity at this point. If it's causing you pain, just stop. So I stopped, and he was right. Like, and at that weight, I think my lowest was 217. I felt underweight. It's the first time I felt underweight, even though if you looked at me, you'd say that guy's a little overweight, like just a little overweight. For me, I felt underweight. My appetite spiked. I'd gone past like the healthy weight loss point, I think, for how fast I got there. My appetite spiked. And I've actually like just sort of the weight sort of crept back in pieces, and I haven't stressed about it, but I haven't been consistent with my rules the last few months because we're back in seasonal affective disorder, and it hit me hard this year. And I'm on barely any metoprolol. I'm not on any blood pressure medications anymore. Like, I'm on this tiny little dose. So from 300 milligrams metoprolol, now I take 12.5 milligrams twice a day. And the only reason I'm on it is because I'm on the flecainide daily. And without the metoprolol, the flecainide puts me into atrial flutter. Paired with the flecainol, it works great to keep me out of Afib. So that's the only reason I'm on it. And so where was I going? Oh yeah, so the seasonal affective disorder came on, and it wasn't the beta blocker because I really don't have any side effects from that small a dose. And it's just pure seasonal affective disorder, and it just hit me so hard this year. And maybe it's because I'm working remotely, so I'm not going out. My office is in the basement, and I fought it off for a while by going to the tanning booth every morning. I would wake up and go straight to the tanning booth at the gym, come back, and that seemed to extend the season, let's say, but eventually caught up with me. And then I flew to Grand Cayman for a week, and during the week I just felt amazing.
I bet.
And when I got back, I felt amazing for a few days. And I actually lost weight when I was in Grand Cayman. I pigged out. But it was all real wholesome. It was chef prepared, but it was all real food, no processed. Had hardly any process all week. And I walked 5 to 10 kilometers a day. Like, we didn't take cabs anywhere. We just walked everywhere. and I actually came back a few pounds lighter, and I felt like $1,000,000 for about 3 days, and then it all tanked again. And so yesterday when you and I met for the pre-show prep, like I was in a bad place, and I'm really happy to say that I actually got a good night's sleep last night.
Okay.
And my viewers recommended to me that I get this to get a light therapy lamp. That the tanning probably was not the ideal approach, although maybe it was helpful. So I've been using this lamp, and I feel like it's helping because in the morning when I'm at my desk, I'll leave the lamp on. I'm using it as a lamp right now to light me.
Yep.
I find I have more energy after I've had it on in the morning. So I hope that I'm getting out of the seasonal affective disorder, but this year it just hit me so hard, and it's left me weak, and I've gained a few pounds back. And if you look at my older videos from, let's say, I don't know, you can see it on my face, I'm about 20 pounds heavier, right? And but having said that, most people who lose a ton of weight like I did within 2 years gain 100% of it back. So I lost just a ton of weight and regained 20% of it and pretty much leveled off. So I'm okay with that. Maybe it's because, again, I'm in my 50s. I'm okay with that. I don't need meds for my blood pressure. I don't need to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes like some of my friends do. I can go run a 5 or 10K with no notice. I can bench press, a couple plates on any given day, even if I'm tired. And, I've had the last 950 days, I've had one aphid episode in all that time. So I'm not beating myself up over it. I'm still making videos. People are still giving me all this positive support on YouTube and Facebook. And I'm not, but having said that, it's partly why I want to do this half marathon. One, show an afibber can do it. And the other, because I know it'll keep my weight in line. Just as the running volume goes up, my weight will come down.
Yep.
And what I have to do now is I have to get honest with myself and go back to my basics. Weigh myself every day, count my calories, count everything I eat. So, if anyone wants to come along with me, go on MyFitnessPal, Big Northern Bear YouTube, and friend me up and help me keep honest. I appreciate the support. And it's public, so there's no secret code. You can just friend me on MyFitnessPal. Let's lose some weight together.
Yeah.
Okay?
One thing about your YouTube page is I find your story really inspirational. The lifestyle changes you've made, losing the weight you've lost, and the pictures on your Facebook page they're really inspirational. So I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think the motto that I understood about YouTube is show don't tell. So I try to show, right? And the thing that pisses me off about YouTube is the one thing I never want to do while I'm here, and that's on YouTube. You tend to only see the parts of people that they want known, and that's fine. That's fine. No one's going to watch like the Logan brothers if they're always jerks.
Right.
They're only going to show the popular stuff and Mr. Beast. Maybe he's a jerk behind the scene. Who knows? No one's. But for something like this, I'm trying to develop like an honest connection with people. And the people who watch my channel and possibly yours, we're flawed people, right? We have health problems. We may or may not have contributed to those problems with crappy habits. And so I put myself out there to say, look how terrible I was at life. And I can come back some of the way. So come along with me. And even if you can't make the journey, well, then you can live vicariously with me through YouTube, and we can commiserate together, and you can dump a big long comment this long, and I will feel genuine empathy with you, because I know what it's like to feel hopeless. Like I totally get what it's like to feel hopeless. And the other thing I like to convey is, in a way, I feel lucky I got AFib, because my father died of cancer when he was 39. He couldn't do anything about it. What's he going to do? Quit smoking? He already had cancer. He ate fine. He wasn't overweight. He had a physical job. So I consider myself lucky to have a condition I can actually do something about. And that's a message I want to put out to people. Like, I mean, heart conditions are serious, but you can do something about it. You can have a proactive step. Imagine if you had liver cancer. I mean,
Right.
should almost feel grateful for your ectopic beats. You know, um, your obstructive sleep apnea. It's something you can do something about. Your pre-diabetes and your diabetes. It's something you can do something about.
Yep.
Just with diet and exercise. There's so many people dying in hospitals wishing they had a disease they could do something about instead.
Yep. Yeah, I think you made that point in a recent video. You know, it's a wake up call when something like this happens. So take action. You know.
Yeah, I mean, well, and every guest I've had on my show has made the same points, right? Like it's,
Yep.
And it's because they're worth repeating and they're worth really, really getting. So, I mean, if any of your viewers are feeling like you don't know where to start, I mean, I know how you feel, man. Like when I got out of cardiac care, I okay, I was so bad, even when I was competing powerlifter. I couldn't go from my basement to my bedroom without stopping on the middle flight of stairs for a rest. That's how bad my cardio was. So when the doctor said go walk an hour a day, I had to take it in 10-minute chunks. And now I'm running 10Ks. So the lesson in there is that wherever you're at, you can find a little something extra you can do. Maybe it's just, you know, if you're sitting in your chair because it's painful to walk, well, maybe that something extra is, well, just make yourself stand up twice as often as you do. And then work up to 3 times. I mean, because you don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, baby steps.
You don't know where it's going to lead. One of the best business books I read is called From Good to Great, and they focused on the small changes and the flywheel analogy, which is where I got my flywheel analogy. But you know, when Kennedy announced we're going to put a man on the moon, they didn't know how they were going to get to the moon. They had no clue going to get a guy on the moon, but they knew the next problem they had to solve that got them one step closer. So they just worked on that. Okay, well, we need a way to shield the shuttle from the radiation. So let's develop that. Okay, now we have that. Oh, well, what's the next thing? Well, I need to figure out how to get a bit more fuel in the rocket because now we got to carry this heavy radiation shielding up. And it was just those incremental little things. And suddenly we have men on the moon. And so
Absolutely.
you don't need to know the full path, but I promise everyone watching right now knows one thing they could do close that puts them closer to their goal. You know the one thing. I don't know what it is for you, but you know it. There's something you can do. Maybe it's improve your sleep quality. Maybe it's clean up your mind. I mean, one diet everyone ignores is the mental diet. If you're watching YouTube videos and social media and TikToks, and you find that you're in a worse mood 5 minutes in than when you got there, you're on a junk food diet for your mind and your body will follow. So give some of that up. Put your brain on a no junk food diet. One thing when I'm really on point with my diet and exercise, I naturally find myself watching like training videos and biohacker videos, guys trying to hack their health, and supplement guys. And it's not because I think they're fonts of wisdom, but I'm trying to become what I repeatedly do.
Yep.
So by being the type of person who's always watching training videos, it naturally makes you want to train. In one of my videos on my alternative channel, we'll call it, where I just focus on weight loss and I just dump my weight loss method into it for anyone who cares, called making the shift. But I talk about this time I was in a rut and couldn't get myself to work out. So I said, well, I gave myself a little agreement. Well, you don't have to work out in the morning, but what you have to do is when you get up, you have to put on your gym clothes. Right? So I didn't have the excuse to procrastinate anymore. So I got up, I put on my gym clothes, I'm done. Victory. But now I feel like working out because I'm in my
Yeah.
gym clothes, right? Like, so the first time I did that, put on my gym clothes, I'm sitting there with my coffee. I'm at my desk. My treadmill is literally just there. And I just put the coffee down. And I just walked over to the treadmill. And I'm like, why not? And I just started. And
Yep.
I don't remember deciding to work out. It grew organically from the fact here I am with my workout clothes. There's a treadmill next to me, and it just naturally happened.
Yep. You put it in
So
motion. Yep.
yeah, create momentum. You put
Yep.
little turns on your flywheel because a flywheel is a bank of momentum. And every little turn you give it, it builds this bank of energy, this bank of
Yep.
momentum that just carries you forward. And all the little victories suddenly start adding up into great big victories. So, um, so really, all the business process training I had is what I didn't, I wasn't concerned with the biology. I didn't have the knowledge base that got me there was how to build good habits, not being some health food expert, not being some supplements expert. Just I focused on my habits, and I think that is something. So clean up your mind diet, get your mind thinking right, get your sleep apnea under control so you're well rested. Um, I mean, my latest video is actually about how I got off the CPAP, but it's sort of jujitsu. First, you got to like embrace it and get control of the beast. And the
Yep.
beast is, excuse me, you're not sleeping well, and you can't recover because you recover in your sleep. You can't recover from mental stress, emotional stress, psychic stress, or like cognitive stress. Let's say physical stress. You can't recover it. So you're spinning the flywheel in the opposite direction every time you don't get a good night's sleep. So sleep is super important. For me, everything starts with sleep. When I go a few nights without sleeping good, everything goes off the rails. I just
Yeah.
can't do it. I
Same.
just
I
can't
agree.
do it. Yeah. So, do you have sleep apnea?
I don't. I was checked for it, but I don't sleep well some nights. I have insomnia some nights. So
Is that anxiety?
I think it's more anxiety induced. I do. Yeah.
I'm
Comes and
gonna
goes.
plug. I'm gonna plug Gail, but Gail actually, I've been just chatting with her on the side. Gail yoga. She's usually on the live streams and chat, but she actually just put a video up today or yesterday, 43 minutes guided meditation to get you to sleep. So I'm actually going to use that tonight. So
Absolutely.
I'll give you a link. We can plug her maybe. So, because, God bless Gail. She's overcome a lot, and I'm hoping to have her on my show soon. And so I don't know if she posted that because of my conversations with her. She knows because I've mentioned I haven't been sleeping good, or that she's just wanted to do it, and maybe that gave her the reason. But thank you, Gail, for posting that.
That's
I'm
great.
gonna give it a good try. And I slept good last night, and I feel like 80% of the way back. I'm hoping I sleep good tonight because I'm supposed to run 5 miles tomorrow. So I really want to have a good night's sleep tonight.
Absolutely. Get rested for it.
Yeah. So it's been it's like you with your ablation, you've had your ablation.
Yes.
And that's how I found you, because I was looking for videos about ablation, and you were like, the positive thing,
Right. Yep.
because you see a lot of Facebook groups. I'm in a lot of Afib groups, and everyone's getting their third, fourth, and fifth ablation. It creates an impression like, oh my God, does this ever work? But the reality is, the people that it works don't keep hanging out in the Facebook groups. They go on and live with their life. So you get a really
Yep.
lopsided opinion of how. So seeing your videos was a breath of fresh air, and I'm glad we became friends and started talking.
Yeah, me too. It's a great point because I get a lot of comments, especially on that ablation video, and so many people are pretty negative about that. Maybe they had a bad experience, but I would say 90% of them are the comments I get are like, same experience as you. Like, it worked. It was much easier on me than I expected, and I'm glad I did it. So that's good to hear because there is a lot of negativity out there about ablation.
There is, and it's natural. Like
Yeah.
It's natural to be scared of someone going to thread something up into your heart and burn a ring in it, right? So
Absolutely.
you're already biased to the fear side of it, and then you hear people saying, "Well, it didn't even work for me. I got to get my third, or it only worked for 6 months." but
Yeah,
you're not hearing from the people where it was successful.
absolutely.
Because
Yeah, it's
yeah,
they get
they're
on with
not
their
in
life.
social media completely. They get on
Yeah,
with their life, right? Except for
absolutely.
the rare guy like Steve, who remembers his roots and keeps
Yeah.
posting
Yep.
to encourage us forward. But
Yep.
and now my other YouTube friend Big said he had his ablation and it's quite
That's right.
successful for him. So now I'm like, well, that's 2 out of 2. 2 people I know have their ablation,
Yep.
and the guy I work with now he's getting his ablation, and I'm starting to think, man, I should have just got it years ago, maybe. But there's some
Well,
question about whether I'm going to get an ablation or not.
yeah, that's what I wanted to go into. I mean, you've done a really good job with your lifestyle. It sounds like the medications are working.
Yeah.
But I know you have recently talked with your cardiologist or electrophysiologist, and you put out a
Talked to
video about this.
electrophysiologist and my
Hmm.
cardiologist
And they had some thoughts
and
about your future treatment. So yeah.
my family. Yeah. And
Hmm.
and with my YouTube audience. I mean, had some
Absolutely.
honest conversations. I'm always honest in the comments.
Yeah. So what do
And
you see? What do you see in your future?
well, when I went and met with the surgeon, the EP who was actually going to do the work, um, he told me this is actually optional for me at this point, and that let's keep you on the waiting list because it's a year waiting list here in Ontario. So let's not pull you out of the wait list, but you have time to think about it, and you right now don't really seem to need it. And if you can maintain, your weight loss and your blood pressure, and he told me I could go off the blood thinners, which was a great moment for me. And when you come back, so I'm probably seeing him around September. You can make your final decision then. But what's, I mean, this is what's hard for me, right? When you're a YouTuber, because I put out a video celebrating that I probably won't need the ablation.
Yep.
So it's almost really hard to come out later and say, maybe I do. Right. So, and I actually get people, and they're quite right to say so. Well, if you haven't had AFib in like 900 days, what are you getting an ablation for? The problem that I also talk about, and I don't think people make the connection, is that my resting heart rate is about 36. And it's about 6 months ago was about 39. So every month I'm on that beta blocker, it's bringing me down danger the other way. And then I had those 2 scary experiences I talked about after some bench press sessions recently where
Right.
I felt like it was trying to go to AFib, but it didn't get there. And after that squat session where I had like all the energy left my body for a few hours, and I'm thinking, if I pull myself off this 1-year list and then it turns out that I should have got it, I'm really going to regret it. So I think my decision is I'm going to proceed with the ablation because I don't see a downside, and I need to get off the beta blockers. My resting heart rate, and possibly because of all the running, but my resting heart rate is too low. And so my options are to just go off all the medication and see if I go into AFib, right? Or get the ablation. Right now, I think, and I still have time to change my mind again, but I'm
You've got
pretty sure
time.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
Complicating this is I have a trip to Europe planned, and so you can't mess with your medication for like 3 months before a trip, or you won't have travel insurance, right? So my plan is after that trip to Europe, I'm going to do a 2-week trial with no medication at all. But so I can't even test until like after that trip. So that'll probably be late August. I'll do a trial because part of me is going to be like, if I get the ablation, I'll also be like, well, you should have tried it for a few weeks with no med, just seeing what happened, right? You should have just tried it. So I am going to do that experiment. I went before my last trip, 3 months before. I did the experiment the EP asked me to do, to go off the beta blocker for a week to see if my blood pressure went up. So I went off the flecainide on my beta blocker for just a week. But he said flecainide takes almost a week just to get out of your system.
Okay.
And my blood pressure didn't go up, so I knew I was okay to just stop the blood thinners altogether. When I met with my cardiologist, he said, well, he said, I know the guy went through the Chad Vask 2 with you and the Hasbled and compared and said there's only about a relative 1% extra risk if you're off the blood. I get that, but it's still 1%. I said,
Right.
well, what if I could mitigate the 1% another way? Would you feel better? He said, well, how are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to donate blood that drops my risk 2%. He's like, oh, okay, maybe that'll work. So now I'm donating blood, and I went and donated blood with my wife. We made a little live stream about it, and because you can't donate blood on blood thinners, so it's kind of a big deal. I wish I could have a little blood donor medal. For
Absolutely.
The achievement wall. It's kind of a big deal, and so went and donated blood, and then it turned out I'm a universal donor. So now they're just nagging the crap out of me to get in there. Like I have the app, and it's bugging me because I haven't gone, but I'm not eligible. I have to be from a Caribbean country. You have to be back 21 days before you can.
That's
donate
right.
blood
You traveled recently.
Here. Yeah, the malaria fear.
One of the first ways I kind of came to grips with something was really wrong with my heart is I was donating blood, and they have a medical tech or a nurse there helping you, kind of checking you out, taking your blood pressure and pulse. And she was counting my pulse, and she looked over to her helper there, and she's like, "It's really irregular, And before that, I felt my heart going to AFib. I had no idea what it was. I just kept always telling myself it's anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
And early on at this point, it was, it would come and go so quickly, maybe an hour at a time, once a week, or even every other week. So it was rare. So I'm like, oh, I'm just stressed today. It's anxiety. And I thought, I'm feeling this irregular pulse, but it's probably just me. But having that medical tech feel that pulse and kind of like, she didn't want to say it to me, but I heard her talking to her coworker there and saying it's really irregular. That was like a wake up call for me. Like, wow, there's something really wrong with your heart. And that's when I really started trying to get into a doctor and was diagnosed soon after.
In hindsight, I mean, in a way you lucked out, right?
Yeah.
Because you would have gone on for years just thinking it's anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had that same thing happening, and I was thinking it was anxiety.
Yeah.
But I wasn't having the symptomology, like I wasn't getting short of breath and unable to walk up the stairs. So I honestly thought it was like too much caffeine and powerlifting and just being stressed from work.
Yeah.
And it would just go away in an hour,
Yep.
It would just, because it went away, I didn't think it was anything serious.
Yep. I think it's easy to do at that phase. It's easy to just write off as something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's easy to deny it. Yeah.
A lot of people I talk to say the same thing, that they had noticed that. So if you're, I know only people with AFib watch our videos, or people with a heart condition already. Very few people who aren't aware they have a heart condition yet are watching our videos. But if you have family and they're ignoring their heart racing when they're at rest, they shouldn't be. Something's going on.
Yep.
That's something to be investigated. Your heart should not just suddenly speed up when you're at rest. It shouldn't speed up because you lay flat in bed. That shouldn't make your heart speed up, which is another common symptom people ignored until they found out they had AFib. So, yeah, for sure. But maybe that's a bit of karma because you were out giving to the world. You're giving blood. So
maybe
the world paid you back. Because if you hadn't done something selfless like that, you never would have found out. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I never thought of that.
I look at my whole channel. My whole channel is a karma project. I look at it that way because I'm almost monetized on YouTube. I don't know how popular I'd have to get before I even get back even a third of the investment I put in. I just see it as a
you don't do it for money. Absolutely.
No. If I was doing it for money, I'd do it a whole different way.
Absolutely.
About a whole different subject, I'm sure. Yeah. So, man, it's good, but it's really great to be in this community now online, and we're starting to build a real community, right? Like you and Sed, and now I don't want to reveal who they are yet until So they're actually come on my show, but I have
You you've got
some
some really
great
cool
guests
people coming
coming.
up. You do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think, and they're gonna. What my first video, I said I want to build a home for us here on YouTube, because when I was in the hospital for that week, um, I did what everyone does. I went on YouTube looking for videos, and I
absolutely.
ended up watching essentially the same script read by a different doctor over and over again. What is AFib? How do we treat AFib? What are the risk factors for AFib? God bless you guys, but you don't all have to do the same video. And and then I came across a couple of videos from people who just had AFib. They didn't have the medical knowledge, but they just talked about their struggle, and they had done these videos like 6 years ago, and it was just sort of like, I have this channel on welding, but I made a little video about AFib on my welding channel, and I'm like, why didn't this guy keep making videos? Because that's one of his most popular videos on his
I
welding
I
channel.
I noticed that too, several people that way. Yep. Completely
So
different
I'm like,
topic. Yep.
and I needed a way to vent and get out my frustration, and most importantly, I find, again, I'm going to plug a video, but I did a video on what I call AFib loneliness. And when you're first diagnosed and you don't have a friend with AFib, you feel like nobody understands you. You feel like you can explain yourself to them. You can say to them, I feel like I have a jack in the box or the heart, it might go off. They understand that, but they don't understand the impact on you that has. And they never could. They just never could. The same way you couldn't understand what it's like to lose a child unless you've lost one. It's terrible, it's horrific, but you can't truly understand until it's happened to you. And then when you get with another parent's happened to them, you have something there. And so the AFib loneliness is like that. You have some AFib loneliness where people understand you, but they don't deeply understand your fears. And when you and I first talk, there was like an instant like brotherhood because of that.
Absolutely. Yep.
And yeah, and so everyone I've met with AFib, it's been like that. And I have people messaging me all these different channels, and I always try to answer them because of the AFib loneliness. And no one should have to be alone with something like that anymore. We have a connected world, and I don't want anyone to feel alone with that. And I get like sweet little old ladies that are in care homes, and they're leaving big long comments on my video, and I love you gals, keep doing it, I love reading it, I love responding to it. And then I got young guys who are like 42, and it's like, why the hell is this happening to me?
Yeah.
I've been an athlete and eat well and training hard my whole life, and those guys too, but they all have the AFib loneliness in common until they start connecting with others. So
Absolutely.
definitely start connecting. Definitely. So
Yep. Completely agree.
yeah, and YouTube's a beautiful thing that way, and I don't know what else to say tonight. I feel like we just covered so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about your channel or?
Well, obviously, I want to grow it, and
Mhm.
I feel like what we have, yourself and myself. I feel like there's this whole iceberg of people out there, and we've only just met the tip of them. Because
I agree.
I mean, AFib's the most common heart condition, but at the same time, a lot of what we talk about AFib actually is broadly applicable to any heart condition,
Mhm.
right? Like walking, good food. So, and sometimes if I'm not feeling well, I don't want to be on camera, but I still want to make content. So that's why I started the audio video podcast,
Yeah.
and now that's on Spotify and iTunes, and reach all those people. I'd be crazy not to do it. So I'm really excited
Absolutely.
about the podcast. Yeah, and I do my live streams because my live streams allow me to connect with people in real time and just talk to them. And a lot of times it's the same group coming out, and sometimes it's all new people, and it's always fun. And we just go at a topic, and we throw some comments on the screen, answer some questions.
Yeah, I would describe your channel someone asked me, I mean, I'd say it's entertaining. You have great guests. You're very personable. And I've mentioned before, I think it's really inspiring. So I think your story
Thanks.
is in general, and the guests you have, there's been some really good stories on there. So I encourage
I
people to
guess.
definitely go subscribe and follow you for a while on your channel.
Thanks.
Check out some of your videos.
Well,
Absolutely.
you've been very supportive, and it's great that we can collaborate sometimes.
It's great.
And,
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been fun.
yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. And I'll just plug where people can find me quickly, but you
Please
can,
do.
yeah, you
Absolutely.
can obviously find me on YouTube at Big Northern Bear, Twitter at Big Northern Bear, Facebook the Big Northern Bear because it was taken, and BigNorthernBear.com is my website. You can find everything there. Podcast. You can get one of my T-shirts. If you buy a T-shirt, it sponsors an episode. So I got my hand in like a lot of little things. But I mean, it's more about the community. It's not about selling T-shirts. The T-shirts are just fun.
It's fun. Absolutely.
They're just fun, and come on board. We've got so much support going now. We're at the point where you feel like it's a movement has started. Do you feel that like there's a movement started?
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of feel that way. So I'm happy to have you subscribe. I've got some great guests coming up. Join the live streams, mix it up in the comments. I love doing that. I was terrified at first. Now I'm all over it. And I'm hoping Steve gets out there soon and does a live stream, because I think he'll get addicted once he does it.
Yeah, you're definitely encouraging me. I've been hesitant, but I'm moving that way for sure.
You're 75% of the way there now.
I'm getting there.
You got a virtual studio.
Yep.
Thank you for having me on, man.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great catching up, and I hope to do it again soon.
Okay.
Have a good night.
You too.
In the video description, you'll find links to Danny's YouTube page and other social media accounts. I highly recommend checking out his content and supporting his work. Thank you all for your ongoing support. If you're not sure what to watch next, check out this video right here. The YouTube is recommending. I think you'll really enjoy it. Take care, and I will see you next time.